See my friend Rodney Blue up there. Rodney helped with this book, by the way. I talked to him about cross country, and he read it, make sure I was on point about everything. And Rodney, I want to thank you for what you did. Very, very much appreciated. Now there is food over here, and boy, I want to thank Sandburg College for having me. I want to thank my friend Thad Jackson back here, who's going to keep me out of tech problems, pull me out because I'm a moron when it comes to that stuff. I especially want to thank Amy Jo Calkins, who is the library coordinator. She has made all of this possible, and she has just been terrific. Let's give her a big hand, please. Now, use the Sandburg Library, please. It is a great resource, and I give that pitch for Amy Jo and your facility out there. The name of my program, and Thad, if you'll just run that up there. Get it here. Yeah, we'll get there. No Ordinary Season, the birth of a book. Who in here writes?
Raise your hand.
Well, you all should be raising your hand because you're made to write here at Sandburg, I think. How many of you write for publication or entertainment? Right here, I have Tia Payne, who writes under the
Philena Kelly.
Philena Kelly. And I have her book. She's an excellent writer. She writes Christian fiction. Well, if you have a birth, you've got to have a conception somewhere, don't you? And so let's have Thad move that on. My book was conceived by inspiration. And let's go to the person who inspired me. Go ahead, Thad. There she is. That is my older daughter, Angel. That is, she is the mother of this wonderful young lady right here, Maya Wright. Let's give them a hand here. How did she inspire me? Well, I'll tell you how. She ran on the cross-country team at Galesburg High School, and in the summer of 1986, as she was approaching her senior year, she, another senior, and 3 sophomores dedicated themselves to having the very best season that they could possibly have. And they ran, and they ran, and they ran, and they went up to the University of Wisconsin La Crosse for cross-country camp, and I was so impressed with how they were dedicated to this sport that I said to myself, well, you like to write. You've tried to write things before. They've been rejected. And so why don't you write, I called it, foolishly, a teen novel. So I sat down in the summer of 1986, and longhand, I wrote out this teen novel. Didn't even have a title yet. And this is it right here. This is the first draft. It's all longhand. And when I was done, Thad, you can move on and show them what I had here. I created a character, Cassie Garnett. Now, lest anyone thinks that this is really autobiographical about my daughter Angel, it's not. She was the inspiration. Cassie Garnett is the invention of my imagination. And I thought, well, the theme's going to be this. Cassie wants to be a great cross-country runner. So I get done, I read this draft, and here's what I have. Cassie trains hard. Cassie runs hard. Cassie wins. And if that will go on, I concluded that's not much of a story. It needs more. So I said to myself, you know, think back when you were a kid, Jim, a young person, a teen. You know, what was it that you sought most? Well, you know, I guess the first thing that came to my mind was romance. Romance. And I said, yes, I need romance. And I need it. And there was a song that kept winding around in my head. You ever get a song caught in your head? You ever got a song caught in your head? You ever got a song caught in your head? You know, and you just can't get rid of it? And I said, that song summarizes what I want to achieve. Still a little naive. Go ahead. You know, rather than, I was going to sing the song for you. But my wife said it was bad enough that you had to look at my face for 40 minutes. You shouldn't have to hear my singing voice either. So go ahead and Thad, let's have one of the old teen idols singing. And if you want to get into one of those old-time swaying moods, you can do it. I'm going to do it a little bit here if my 71-year-old body holds up. We ready to go?
Emotion.
Come on, let's go. Swing, that's it. Swing. Oh, don't be shy. There you go.
Confusion reigns. A world of hope and laughter and tears.
And then I put a little move in it.
At times a gentle breeze and a hurricane. A world full of doubt, but love works it out. Young
That I think we've got the idea. Now, 60 years ago, that guy, Rick Nelson, was hotter than a $3 pistol. But who has heard of him now? No. Not very many people. But I went ahead, I said it needs more, it needs something like young emotions. Go ahead, Thad. It needs teen angst. Teen angst. All those things that I worried about as a teenager. Does she like me? Does she not like me? Will she let me kiss her? Yes, I did kiss girls before you, honey. This is my wife, Patty. 53 years we will be married.
Wow.
This December 31st. Give her a hand. The greatest thing that ever happened to me, marrying her. No kidding. And I don't say that because I'm expecting something special when I get home either. Okay. So, young emotions might be the answer. So what I do is this. Go ahead, Thad. I create a new character. Jake Nader. 6'5", 225 pounds, basketball player, star basketball player, and local stud. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan. And I write him into the story. But I'm still thinking pretty superficially about this. And so what I have when I'm done with that second draft is Cassie wants to be a great runner. Cassie wants to love with Jake. So Cassie trains hard. Cassie runs hard. Cassie wins. Boy, there's a way to get a guy. And Cassie achieves a romance with really studly Jake. Go ahead. And I read through it, and it's still not much of a story. And this is when I start getting serious. I say, this lacks depth. It lacks struggle, conflict. It lacks a real problem. A good story has to have a problem, conflict of some kind. It has to have a goal that the protagonist, in this case Cassie, is striving for. Go ahead, Thad. So what I do is I lay the manuscript up for a while, and I start doing some introspection, some inventory on myself. I do that as I run. Back in those days, I actually could run. Today, I creep. And as I sit, I do research. And then what I really do, I ask some questions. What was important to me at 17? Really important. Yes, love was. But what was really important was being important beyond myself. Being important to other people. What is important to young adults now, especially a young woman? Get that? And I decided, instead of assuming that I knew everything about young people, which I didn't, I started listening and learning. And I listened and learned not only from my granddaughters, well, actually, yeah, eventually my granddaughters, and my daughters. But when I was teaching here at Sandburg, I started listening to young people like you. You're concerned about your future. You're concerned about what kind of debts you're going to have when you leave college. You're concerned about your finances right now. Yeah, you're concerned about love. That's for sure, or at least stability with somebody. And I got myself what we call beta readers. Beta readers are people who are going to be honest about your work. They're not going to be overly critical because they think it's their job to write like somebody from the New Yorker. Nor are they going to be soft on you because you're their friend. And I picked them from age 17 up to the early 30s. Well, I guess my wife's case, just a little older than 30. Not much, a little older. And they would tell me, no, you got this wrong. We don't talk like that anymore. Here's what we say. Here's an example of what I learned. I learned that the word panties, referring to a woman's undergarment, is now considered taboo, a pejorative among millennials. They say, you can't use the word panties. I said, well, what am I supposed to say when she is sitting around in her panties? They say, why don't you try underwear? So I did that. Go ahead, Dad. I asked myself a question. I said, what I'm hearing from young women is summed up by this question. Do you think my butt is too big? Here's why. Look what our society does to women. It bombards them with images and propaganda telling them what their bodies should be like. And who's writing all this propaganda? Who's portraying these images, or at least taking the photos? Men. Not only that, but I would listen to young women who were almost putting a glass ceiling on what they could achieve. A glass ceiling below the one that was already there for them. And I said, I think what we've got here, do you think my butt is too big? I don't think there'd be a man in here today that ever asked that question. But I'll bet there's some women who have. And I've got women who have said, are my breasts too big? Are my breasts too small? Am I too fat? Am I too thin? So, Matt, you go on. I said, here's the theme. It's going to be self-esteem. It's going to be about casting, developing self-esteem. Now, I have a friend who's an expert on self-esteem. He used to give motivational talks. I talked to him about self-esteem. But I also asked about my own life. what is it that helps someone feel better about themselves? Well, success, what they define success as. And where do we get there? Well, that, if you'll move on, here's what I concluded. I concluded one person can make a difference in another person's life. And I asked myself the question, who made a difference in my life? Who helped me feel a sense of self-worth? My mom and dad did. My wife certainly has. But then, when I was a little kid, the grocery owner down the street, I misspelled it, it should be no two L's, just one. Harold Cheesy Levenberg. A teacher, Walter Dyke. Another teacher, Ray Kemper. A third teacher, Maury Beck. A fourth teacher, Benita Black. Civil rights worker, Charles Redd, when I worked for him at the Urban League. And we did all kinds of stuff to stir up trouble. You need to stir up trouble sometimes. My boxing coach, Sonny Duncan. Another teacher, Marvin Baker. And then I asked the question, who enhanced the person who inspired me? Who enhanced her self-esteem? My daughter, Angel. Two people jumped out of me. Sixth grade teacher, Jim O'Hearn. She thinks so much of him and what he did for her. She went with us out to his assisted living facility in Littleton, Colorado, and sat there, and she had written a poem to him. She read that poem, and she saw. He meant so much to me. And Evan Massey, the great Evan Massey. A lot of people don't know it, but before Evan Massey was a basketball coach at Galesburg High School for the women, he was a cross-country coach. I say the single greatest thing that happened to my daughter in high school was not algebra, was not geometry, was not any class. It was running cross-country for Evan Massey. And so, let me ask you a question. What profession predominates that list?
Teachers.
Say it.
Teachers.
So I said to myself, I need a teacher to come into Cassie's life to help her find the extraordinary in herself. Because up until this point, Cassie, in my book, had thought she was stuck in mediocrity. The only thing she had been a little better at than being mediocre and everything else, the only thing was cross country. She was the best runner on a team that really sucked. A team that really sucked. But the coach hadn't paid much attention to her. He was a chemistry teacher. He loved chemistry. He only coached for the money. He'd say to the girls, I'll go out and run a couple miles or a mile or whatever if you want, and then come back and we'll call it a day. Well, Rodney, you know that is no way to get a team. And so what I do, because when you're a writer, I don't say this as blasphemy, but when you're a writer, that's the closest you will ever be to being God. So I kill him off. And go ahead, Dad. And I bring a new character into it, next to Cassie, the most important character in the story, Sharna Rothstein, who goes by C.R. Simon, enters Cassie's life as a new coach and influence. Now they have their ups, they have their downs, like in a relationship, but finally, after a very transformative incident, they bond. And C.R. Simon makes a difference in Cassie's life. Now you have to know about C.R. The setting for my story, No Ordinary Season, is a small, fictional town in Indiana, Riverbend. Population about like Knoxville. C.R. Simon comes from New York City via Indianapolis. She's Jewish, coming to a town where even the few Catholics have to pack up and leave on Sunday to go worship somewhere else. So she's going to have her own obstacles to overcome. Okay, Dad. I put her in the story and I make her a real person. I make Nader a real person instead of a cardboard character. And I have to ask myself the question, what else belongs in this book? And the answer is what I believe. What I believe. And here are the things that I picked out to put in the book. Go ahead, Dad. First of all, the original sin of the United States of America is racism. It was there in Jamestown when the first Africans were brought to English America in 1619. It was there throughout the 17th century when states said that those of African ancestry were going to be made servants or slaves for life. It was there at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia when they wrote in that clause that said that black people were to be counted in the census as 3/5 of a person. And so I said, we're going to have something in there about racism. And I create the character Kiesha Hendricks, the Hendricks family, the only African-American family in River Bend. Kiesha is the only African-American student at River Bend High School. And although there are people who ostracize them, discriminate against them, try to, they are not going to be victims. And Kiesha's father, Leon Hendricks, is a role model for all of us to follow. Because when his kids are denied service at the local hot spot, the place where they go to get their candy and stuff like that, he marches them down there and he tells this guy, you either serve my kids or I'm going to get a lawyer and I'm going to take you to court. They're not going to play the victim. Then I wanted to deal with issues of class. Class across all ethnicities. So I create Destiny Berry. Destiny is what they call a river rat in River Bend, Indiana. She lives down by the Mississinewa River. They've been flooded out 3 times. And the government has told them, the next time you're flooded out, you're not going to get any more money. And Mrs. Berry says, well, you can go F yourself. I'm going to live where I want to live. And Destiny is rough around the edges, but as Cassie says right at the beginning when she introduces Destiny, Destiny is a stand-up person. And you find that out later in the story. She's matched up or juxtaposed against the the UCs, or the upper crust, who have moved in. They work in the local town of Marion. Some are bankers, some are attorneys, some work as big shots at the automobile plant. Then we have anti-Semitism that raises its ugly head, and that's pretty timely now when you think about Nazis marching in Charlottesville, yelling blood and soil, which was a Nazi cry in Germany in the 1930s. Or when you hear them say, Jews won't take our place. By the way, you cannot be a fine person and a good person and march alongside the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. Plain and simple. And then I deal with the one thing that every woman has to be concerned about at some time: sexual assault. The last thing that really stands out is through her development, her maturity, developing self-esteem through the friendship of C.R. Simon, Cassie stands up for the right thing. Okay, that. I think I have the final draft. I've written this thing so many times, my wife will tell you, I've got notebook after notebook after notebook. But I'm wrong. Go ahead, Ted. I sent it away. Actually, I should tell every writer about this if you don't know. Writer's Market has all the agents, and I start looking for an agent. And they come back and say, we like your book, but it's not right for us. That's a way of saying buzz off. That's a way of saying buzz off. But some of them say, we like your book, but here's what we think you need to do. So I revise, I reject, get rejected, I revise, I rejection and revision, rejection and revision, rejection, revision, and so on. I think I get rejected 17 times. Go ahead. And I'm discouraged. And then a very fortuitous thing happens to me. And you can play that clip.
I want teachers to get their recall rights. I want them to be protected so we do not have teachers with 30 and 25 years dismissed like they were in 1982 when I was in the district. And if they send these teachers back without the recall rights they want, they're going to go back with low morale, and all of us in this community will suffer.
After 7 hours of mediation today, that stalemate continues. It is rooted in education reform legislation that was actually passed 3 years ago. The legislation mandates that layoffs are based mostly on performance ratings rather than
I was invested in the teacher strike in 2014. I was retired, but I wanted the teachers to get a fair shake. Didn't seem like anything was happening. So one of my friends, Emma Sargent, had passed away, and I asked myself, what would Emma do? And I rolled over in bed in the morning and I said, Hattie, I'm going to take a sleeping bag, my toothbrush, a prayer book, put on my kippah, and I'm going over to the board office and I'm going to sit in until they either arrest me or give these teachers their seniority rights. Well, they arrested me. And you wouldn't think, by the way, I was taken to the Knox County Jail, and they do have a nice facility down there. And I was treated very nicely. I often wondered, though, I wonder if I had been black, if they had treated me quite as well. And it was a good thing to happen here because, go ahead, Thad. Wonderful thing happened. You can go on. I got arrested, yes. And then I get a phone call from someone who's fairly well known in what's called the traditional mystery or cozy mystery genre, Susan Van Kirk. She had written Three Can Keep a Secret, and of course the rest of that, if it's two are dead. And she said, Jim, this is Susan Van Kirk. I said, oh, yeah. And she said, I would like to meet with you and talk with you about this strike. I'm writing a mystery where there's a teacher strike and someone's going to get killed. And I said, oh, make it the Board of Education. Not really, just teasing. Just teasing. And so Susan and I meet. And in the course of about after 2 hours of talking about my experience, I finally said, I have a manuscript I tried to get published. And she was interested. And she said, go ahead, Thad. She said, every writer needs an editor. And everyone needs help at some point. And this is the message you can take away. Never, ever ever let pride get in the way. Because everyone needs help sometime. If you're struggling with a class, utilize this tutoring center here. Go to your instructors, go to your professors. Say, I need help. And don't wait until you're in over your head. Do it right away. There is no shame in getting help. Why do you think we have teachers? Why do you think we have tutoring centers? Why do you think we have Coach Blue? Coach Blue, you still coaching cross country?
Yes, sir.
If the young women didn't need help, they wouldn't need a coach. Get the help. Go ahead, Dad. So I have copy editors that kind of rearrange sentences, take out a few things. Melinda Jones Rhodes at the Galesburg Public Library, Trudy Ring, who writes, good friend of mine and my wife's, who writes for the Advocate in Los Angeles, and I keep relying on those beta readers. And I also, at Susan's suggestion, get a developmental editor. Now, you have to hire him. You have to hire him. And I hired Erin Lyles, who lives in Texas, and we did everything by email. And she told me, developmental editors know what publishers want. Because you know, once the manuscript leaves you, it's no longer art to a publisher. It's business. Can I sell it? Can I make money? So Erin helps me. Hattie proofreads it. Susan proofreads it. I proofread it. Go ahead with the next one. Van Kirk says to me, and she's read it this last time, it's just about there. I said, what? After all of this? She advised me that you have the wrong ending. The last chapter should be the next to last chapter. The next last chapter should be the climax, and you need a transition chapter in between. Go ahead, Dad. And I say, well, ratchet. But I read it, I have to admit that she's right. So go on, Dad. I write for 2 years, or 2 days. It seemed like 2 days. 2 days, and I fix the ending, plus include a transition chapter. Susan reads it, smiles, and says, everything is cool, ready to go. And I said, go where? Go where? I've sent it all over. And here again, setting pride aside. I had been told about my son-in-law's brother who had been in the publishing business for 30 years. They said, get him to help you. Get him to help you. You don't do anything on your own. Everybody needs help. And enter my friend Brett Wright. Go ahead. Brett Wright of PMD Pros. That is PMD Pros. I corrected it last night. It's PMD Pros. PMD Pros. And Brett says, I'd like to read it. And he read it. He said, I really like this. In fact, I think, Brett, you were a little surprised because you thought such a stumblebum like me probably couldn't have, and I had a lot of help. Go ahead, Dad. Brett pitches it to 2 publishers, and they both want to publish it. Wow. You got 2 people. Well, I wouldn't say exactly fighting, but they want it. Go ahead. I signed a contract with Lance Colson of Father and Son Publishing in Tallahassee, Florida. Go ahead. No Ordinary Season is born on January 24, 2017. They call it in the publishing world released. It retails at $19.95 plus Illinois tax of $1.75 or out the door $21.70. You get it on Amazon, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, and you get it from me. And I guess they have it in the library. And by the way, that cover was created by Brett. and his friend, what's his, over in Elmwood, right? What's his name? Brian Hoffman. And we used local people, and the reason we did our own cover, and I had to do it at my own expense, was because the cover that the publishers, the choices they sent us were just cheesy. And my wife, I said, gee, which one should I choose, Hattie? And she says, none of them. They're horrible. She says, it's like you're writing for an 8-year-old kid, and this is not an 8-year-old kid book. This is a young adult book. These people don't know from anything. And so we struck out our own, we got our own cover, and we have, starting from your left, no, your right, going to the left, we have Sydney Wright, Brett's daughter, older daughter. We have Maya Wright. Raise your hand, Maya. And we have Sierra Bolden. And we have Eric Thompson. Now, in order to do this, you have to have a release so that you can use their name and their image. And then I had to pay them a little bit, and they were just great people to work with. Okay, go on. The reviewers came in, had a number of reviews. Brett sent it to Dina Castor, who won the bronze medal in the women's marathon at the 2004 Olympics in Athens. Terrence, how you doing? She said, called it an extraordinary story. Gee, what do you say when somebody like that? Then the Midwest Book Review says an impressively compelling, inherently fascinating novel that's very highly recommended. I think it's a little over the top, but I'll take it. And then finally, the Jewish Book Council says the novel deals with small-town bigotry, anti-Semitism, heavy ideas, and the author addresses them, but the author addresses them with skill. You can read all the reviews on JimJacobsWriting.com. That's my website. Go ahead. What have I learned from my experience? Well, if Thad will move us on here, I'll answer that question. Write what you know. And if you don't know it, you want to write about it, you better research it thoroughly. Almost like a method actor researches a part they're going to play that they've had no experience with. And then never, this is again, I emphasize, never, ever let pride keep you from accepting help. Seldom does anyone accomplish anything solely by themselves. I don't know, maybe there's some guy living on a mountain somewhere, you know, eating bark off a tree and catching rainwater in his hat. Maybe he is. But even if he has a hat, he had to get it from somebody, didn't he? And I have learned that 99% has been great, but a few things suck. First of all, you have to deal with publishers. Now, my publisher has been very accessible. Most people don't get to talk to their publisher. He takes my calls. He's a nice guy. I wish, and this was my fault, I pushed him to get the book out. And that meant that he did not get the book, the manuscript, to the two big review entities, Publishers Weekly and Kirkus Reviews. And once the book is out, they will not review it unless you pay them. And then if you pay them, all they do is let you have the review, and it's up to you to use it. And so we have one more, that's one thing. The other thing is you make some money with the book, but then you have to use the money for your expenses to promote it, because small publishers don't have the money to send you here and there. And so we've been to Burbank, California, to the Barnes & Noble. We've been to a private signing in Phoenix, Arizona. We've been to a small bookstore in Wisconsin. We've been to Iowa a number of times. And Susan Van Kirk and I have worked in tandem, and we've done very well. I pitch her genre, she pitches my genre, and we've sold a lot of books that way. And finally, the last, I think this should be the last one. Yeah. Oh no, how the real work starts. Now the real work starts, because I have to give it that, and that's what I'm trying to do. Go ahead. Questions or comments? Yes.
So from your first draft to the final draft that got published, there were a number of years, it sounds like?
You know, when I started was 1986, as I said, because I was teaching fifth grade. Well, teaching is a lot of preparation, and it was 55 to 60 hours a week, and I just put it up for a while. After I retired in 2004, that's when I dragged it off the shelf and started working on it again.
So I love that, by the way. That's awesome. So did you have it originally set 86, and then did you change the year that it was set by the time?
Yes, I had to, and that was another thing. 86, man, we were out of it in 86. How many of you have heard of a Walkman? Yeah. And then came the iPod, and now the phones. I had to update all that. And the language, too. The language. Now, I had to be careful because, I know the F word is used a lot. Hattie and I watch these shows on Netflix, and it's used a lot. In fact, it's been used so much, she and I have even started using it. But, so I said, how am I going to do this? Because kids don't. I mean, they use it, they don't. So what I did was, when somebody was going to start it, say it, they would start it with, and then they would stop because a teacher was coming by or something like that. And I'll tell you, Melissa Jones Rhodes was the person who said, Jim, she says, you've got to take some of this out of here, because she said, they'll challenge this in libraries. So, and are you a writer? You teach writing. And are you a writer?
Yes.
What do you write?
Short fiction, novels, essays,
And have you had something published?
stories,
All right.
co-review, and co-review fiction.
Boy, that's great. That's great. And what was your book? Where'd she left? She's gone. She goes by Philomena. That is Tia. And her book was The Things He Left Behind, I think was the name of the book. Anyone else have a question? Yes. Sierra, right? Well, I think I'm approaching 1,000, I think. I'm going to be selling them today, but I also realize that college students don't have much money. You don't have 21 70s just lying around and hand to some 71-year-old decrepit Neanderthal. By the way, Neanderthals are a lot better than we give them credit. Approaching. Anyone else write? Well, if you're interested in writing, I'm going to be here. We'll be selling books. Hattie, I know you don't like me to give breaks, give discounts, but this is a college campus, and I would discount it some over here if they're interested. But if you're not interested and you still like to talk to me, come on over. I'll visit with you. Amy has provided me with these little slips. If you want my autograph, I can't imagine why. But I'll sign it for you. And I want to thank Amy Jo once more. It's just been unbelievable. I never expected any of this. I thought I would be in a small classroom talking to three young people. Excuse me. Thad, thank you very much. Thad, step out from behind there so people can see you. I already did. thank again Rodney Blue. I had Terrence Johnson in class back in 1986-87. One of the smartest, no, this is no kidding, there's no joke. One of the smartest kids I've ever had, students I ever had. You're an engineer now, right?
I got a degree out of it.
Well, if I can help with that, let me know, my friend, because you're a great guy. His grandmother and I were really good friends. I thank you very much for staying and listening. I'm honored, and that's all I have to say.